Hello, and welcome to my channel where we talk about books you should read instead of stuff you should buy. A lot of times, the books we discuss center around anti-consumerism and environmentalism. Because if you don't know me, hi, my name is Catherine, and I came out of the womb a tree hugger. When I was 8 years old, I wrote a very angry letter to the arborist who was cutting down the tree in my neighbor's yard, which my parents kept and framed. Feel free to pause and read. Every time I read it, I cry laughing because I was so unhinged, but in the best way. Although I always identified as an environmentalist, my actions did not always align with my values. As a teenager, I worked at Jersey Mike's Subs, where I ate tons of meat and dairy and spent my hard-earned money at Forever 21 and H&M. In college, I went vegan, and then a few years later stopped buying fast fashion. By 2020, I came to fully reject capitalism, and in recent years, I've become even more radicalized. Though I now understand that solving the climate crisis requires major systemic changes, I still maintain that as individuals, we hold some degree of responsibility for our consumer choices, which is why I advocate for living as close to a one-planet lifestyle as possible. What is a one-planet lifestyle, you may ask? I forget where I was first introduced to this concept, but J.B. McKinnon talks about it in his book, The Day the World Stops Shopping. Basically, it's living in a way that is globally replicable, meaning if everyone on Earth matched your consumption level, we would only need one Earth. I say if everyone matched your consumption level rather than consumption habits, because I'm not saying that everyone has to live the exact same lifestyle. You can consume more in certain areas and less in others, as long as on balance, you're not consuming more than your fair share. Regarding living as close to a one-planet lifestyle as possible, I'd add practicable, because something can be technically possible but extremely infeasible, and we can't expect sainthood from the general population. So I'm going to borrow from the commonly cited definition of veganism, which is a philosophy and way of living which seeks to exclude, as far as possible and practicable, all forms of exploitation of, and cruelty to, animals for food, clothing, or any other purpose. Veganism is commonly misconstrued as this demand for perfection and purity, hence why this definition is cited so often in response. It's not about being a perfect consumer, it's about doing what you feasibly can. But unlike veganism, which is pretty straightforward, you just avoid the products of animal exploitation, the one-planet lifestyle is tricky because it's hard to know whether you're actually staying within the threshold. It's not like there's a calculator that tells you how many Earths your annual consumption level requires. Or is there? The Global Footprint Network has a quiz you can take that attempts to do this, but as you will see, it's not very comprehensive, and thus it's not very accurate. I'm going to go through the quiz and answer the questions to the best of my ability, and see how many Earths they claim my current lifestyle requires. And then we'll discuss the flaws with this calculator, and whether a one-planet lifestyle is even feasible without major systemic changes. Alright, what is your ecological footprint? How many planets do we need if everyone lives like you? What is your personal overshoot day? Take the first step. Okay. How often do you eat animal-based products? Never. Animals are friends, not food. How much of the food that you eat is unprocessed, unpackaged, or locally grown? I honestly have no idea. By volume or by calories? Presumably by calories. I mean, aspirationally, I try to eat mostly whole foods, but realistically, probably around 70%. But I might be deluding myself. Unfortunately, there aren't any stores in my area that have those bulk bins where you can scoop the dry beans and grains or whatever into your own reusable bags. I used to do this, but now I have to buy them prepackaged. And to be honest, I don't really pay attention to what stuff is local. I probably should. I could go to the farmer's market on the weekend, but that would add another trip in my car because I usually go grocery shopping on my way home from my weekly commute to save on gas. Okay, I'm gonna say 50% fresh unpackaged food and 30% locally grown. But again, I'm probably deluding myself. Which housing type best describes your home? Freestanding, running water. Listen, I know it's much more sustainable to live in an apartment in the city rather than a single-family home. But what can I say? I hate the dumb city. I lived the city life for a few years. Not my thing. I love my cozy little cabin in the mountains. What material is your house constructed with? This is a stupid question. Like, first of all, I'm assuming it has to do with insulation, so why not just ask me what my annual energy consumption is? And second, it's not like I built it, so the footprint from the materials is not on me. Also, houses are made with multiple different materials. I'm gonna go with wood because it's a cabin, it's mostly wood. How many people live in your household? I'm gonna put 2, even though dogs are people in my book, so technically 4. I get that shared spaces are more eco because it's less space to heat and cool per person, but what this quiz doesn't consider is the ginormous footprint of having children. So if I put 4, I would look more eco by this metric, but in reality, if my husband and I had kids, we would drive up our eco footprint by a lot. What is the size of your home? I guess I was delusional in thinking we had a medium-sized home, because apparently a 1,500 square foot home is large. Do you have electricity in your home? Yes. How energy efficient is your home? I'm going to say above average because we have a heat pump dryer and solar panels, and we have a lot of shade, which reduces our need for AC in the summer. What percentage of your home's electricity comes from renewable sources? According to my solar app, our offset is 22%, which is not great, but not bad considering how much shade we have. But I'm going to put 50% because we send some of our solar power back to the grid because we didn't get a battery. And I think that some of the grid power in our area comes from hydroelectricity. Compared to your neighbors, how much trash do you generate? Okay, this one I'm going to pat myself on the back and say much less. We actually don't have a trash service at our house, so I have to take the trash to the dump myself. We produce like 2 trash bags per month, unless you consider the fact that most of our recycling doesn't actually get recycled, in which case it's more than that. But we compost all of our food scraps and live a minimalist lifestyle, so we don't generate very much trash. Add details to improve accuracy. What comes closest to your monthly new clothing, footwear, and/or sporting goods purchases? Not much at all. 90% of my wardrobe is thrifted. I buy new underwear and socks like once a year or so. How often do you purchase new appliances? Pretty much none. We bought a new washer and dryer when we moved in. Electronics and gadgets. I bought some new gear when I started this channel, but most of my electronics are secondhand. Books, magazines, and newspapers. I pretty much exclusively read ebooks from Libby or thrifted books. Who the fuck still buys magazines or newspapers? What comes closest to your annual new household furnishings purchases? Literally everything in this house except our bedding was thrifted. How much do you recycle? How much do I put in the recycling? Like 90%. How much of that actually gets recycled? Who knows? How far do you travel by car or motorcycle each week? Unfortunately, I live in a 100% car-dependent area. I can walk to the post office, but that's about it. There are literally no buses. My husband and I both work from home, but I have to commute once a week and visit friends and family a couple times a month. So I'm going to round up to 200 miles per week. What is the average fuel economy of the vehicles you use most often? Here's the sitch, okay? I drive a freaking SUV. The gas mileage is not great. But if I replace it with an electric vehicle, I'm just transferring those emissions to someone else. The car will be driven until it dies by someone. But since I bought it used, are the emissions really mine? Also, it is no fault of mine that public transportation does not exist. If we had a high-speed train system, I could drive a total of 30 minutes to a park and ride instead of 3+ hours. Unless you're buying a brand new truck or SUV, driving up the demand for more gas-guzzling tanks on the road, I don't think that you as an individual living in a car-dependent area bear any responsibility for your car's emissions. That said, I do intend for the next car I buy to be electric. When you travel by car, how often do you carpool? If I have the option to carpool, I'll always carpool, but I typically don't, so I'd say 20%. How far do you travel on public transportation each week? Literally none. There's no public transportation in my area. How many hours do you fly each year? I probably fly twice a year now that I live closer to my family, so I'm going to say 12 hours. Okay, let's look at my results. Your personal Earth overshoot day is May 15th. If everyone lived like you, we would need 2.7 Earths. Yikes. How do I compare to others? Well, it could be worse. The average American lifestyle requires 5 Earths to sustain. Then there's a note that says, why can't I get my footprint score within the means of one planet? A person's ecological footprint includes both personal and societal impacts. The footprint associated with food, mobility, and goods is easier for you to directly influence through lifestyle choices. However, a person's footprint also includes societal impacts or services such as government assistance, roads and infrastructure, public services, and the country's military. All citizens are allocated their share of these societal impacts. This is why, if we want to achieve sustainability, we need to focus on both our own lifestyle as well as influencing our governments. Amen to that. While I do think this calculator has some major limitations, I appreciate what it's trying to do. To improve its accuracy, my suggestion would be for it to ask how many children you have and what you do for work. I sell solar part-time, so that should offset some of my carbon emissions. I have friends who do animal rights activism full-time, and given how unsustainable animal agriculture is, that should certainly count for something. And there should be an option to enter your home's annual electricity usage in kilowatt hours. There are probably a bunch of other factors I didn't consider, so if you think of any, leave a comment down below. My takeaway from this is that even if I perfected my consumer choices in my given circumstances by growing as much food as I can, buying as much local, unpackaged produce as I can, and switching to an electric vehicle, I'd still surpass the one planet threshold because of circumstances outside of my control. So a true one planet lifestyle should be understood as a political target rather than an attainable goal as an individual consumer. Rather than making yourself a martyr and living in voluntary poverty to make up for the sins of your society, just do your best and advocate for the rest, as Shellbizzle says. You may not have a consumer responsibility to boycott cars if you live in a car-dependent area, but you have a civic responsibility to advocate for policies that would expand or improve public transportation. My conception of one planet living is living in a way that would be globally replicable if we had green infrastructure in place and our tax dollars funded public services rather than wars and subsidies for billionaires. Envision what an eco-socialist society would look like, and then put into practice whatever aspects of that you can in our current capitalist system. This, in pretentious academic speak, is called praxis. There are certain industries that are flat out unsustainable and cannot be made green, such as fast fashion, meat and dairy, and cruises. You have to eat and clothe yourself, of course, but you also deserve to eat tasty food and wear clothes you feel good in and travel from time to time. But you don't have to eat animals, and you don't have to update your wardrobe every month, and you don't have to book a cruise vacation specifically to enjoy your life. Praxis is boycotting industries that cannot exist in an eco-socialist utopia. Otherwise, don't you feel bad to know you are part of the terrible group that destroys our Earth? Drop out of that group. I'm serious. Thank you so much for watching, and if you want to take the quiz yourself, the link is in the description. Let me know in the comments what your results were. Alright, peace out.